Welcome to today's explainer. Look, if you're tracking the pharma space right now, you know there's basically one giant trend sucking all the oxygen out of the room. But today, we're unpacking a genuinely unexpected strategic move by a massive global player that completely bucks that trend. We're talking about Cipla. They're pivoting their resources in a way that honestly has a lot of industry watchers scratching their heads, moving away from the most lucrative drug category on the planet and leaning heavily into something entirely different.
Okay, let's dive into this. The entire medical and financial world is just obsessed with next-gen metabolic drugs right now. I mean, they're practically printing money. Just look at the absolute market cap explosions for companies like Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. So you got to ask yourself, if you have the manufacturing chops to produce these treatments, why in the world would you choose to hold back? Why intentionally delay the rollout of literally the most hyped drug of the decade? It seems totally counterintuitive, right? But as we'll see, in the complex chess game of global pharma, the obvious move isn't always the smartest one.
Section 1. Cipla's Global Strategy Shift, a Tale of Two Markets.
To make sense of this shift, we have to remember that massive pharmaceutical companies don't operate in a vacuum. They're constantly juggling entirely different geographic markets, and each one comes with its own regulatory mazes and competitive dynamics. Take semaglutide. For those of us in the weeds of the industry, we know this metabolic treatment is the ultimate golden ticket right now. It's sparked an absolute gold rush. It feels like every single company with the lab capacity to do so is sprinting at breakneck speed to develop, manufacture, and market their own versions just to grab a slice of that skyrocketing market share.
Yet despite all that global frenzy, we get this surprising little fact. Cipla is officially deferring its urgent push for semaglutide in its home market of India. Let that sink in for a second. This is a massive, highly capable player deciding to just hit the brakes on a blockbuster category right in its own backyard. While the rest of the industry is burning cash trying to be first, Cipla is actively choosing to pause.
Section 2. Ventolin bound for the U.S., betting on a legacy medicine.
So if they aren't pouring all their immediate resources into the metabolic gold rush in India, where is all that energy actually going? Well, they're targeting Ventolin in the U.S. healthcare market. Now, obviously, this isn't some trendy metabolic miracle. It's a legacy respiratory workhorse. But from a balance sheet perspective, it represents something entirely different. It stands in stark, almost jarring contrast to those shiny new metabolic drugs dominating the news cycle. It offers a highly established, incredibly predictable market profile instead of a volatile hype cycle.
And here is the actionable strategy that makes this whole thing so fascinating. Cipla is actively readying a major launch for Ventolin in the United States right now. They aren't just testing the waters here, they are aggressively pushing this older respiratory drug into a highly competitive U.S. generic market. With the recent supply chain constraints and those spot shortages of critical inhalers we've seen in the U.S., there's an immediate, tangible gap in a multi-billion-dollar market. They see a guaranteed market share grab here, and it completely warrants their absolute focus and immediate capital allocation.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact nature of Cipla's strategic pivot. The contrast in their corporate initiatives is just striking. On one hand, you have an immediate, aggressive push into the U.S. generic market with a legacy respiratory drug to capture guaranteed revenue. And on the other hand, a deliberate pause on a highly sought-after metabolic drug in India, totally avoiding that chaotic, high-cost scramble. These are two entirely different initiatives sitting at total opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of trendiness and geography, and Cipla is deliberately choosing the legacy path for its immediate revenue drive.
Section 3. Why delay the blockbuster? The logic behind the pause.
Now, what's really interesting about this strategy is that it basically boils the entire industry down to two distinct paths for revenue. Because you have to ask, what's the actual strategic logic behind choosing to push a legacy asthma inhaler over a modern weight loss giant? Path 1 is the highly volatile, extremely crowded rush for emerging trends, like semaglutide in India. The potential reward is astronomical, sure, but so is the risk and the cost of entry. Path 2 is the U.S. generic market. It might be, a bit less glamorous to produce asthma inhalers, but it represents an established, predictable, and highly lucrative stream of guaranteed revenue, assuming you can secure supply chain dominance.
Section 4. The Big Pharma Balancing Act. Risk first guaranteed reward.
So the crucial point is that Cipla's move is honestly a masterclass in this balancing act. By recognizing exactly where their immediate operational strengths lie, they're insulating themselves from the chaotic volatility of a trend-chasing market. This breaks down into three huge takeaways for the industry. Number 1, Cipla is choosing to push into immediate U.S. respiratory market gaps where there's clear demand and measurable margins for generics. Number 2, they're actively choosing to pause and just observe the Indian metabolic drug rush rather than bleeding capital to be just another face in the crowd. And number 3, this entirely reflects their broader strategy to balance guaranteed generic revenue against high-risk emerging pipelines. Essentially, they're making sure the foundation of their house is rock solid before they go trying to build a shiny new roof.
Which brings us to our final thought. In an industry that almost always rewards the first to market with the hottest new compound, Cipla is playing a distinctly different, highly disciplined game of patience. Will this strategic restraint and focus on reliable U.S. generic revenue actually pay off in the long run? Or, by deferring semaglutide, are they ultimately leaving billions on the table? It's a fascinating corporate balancing act, and exactly how it plays out is going to tell us a lot about the future of pharmaceutical strategy. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep a close eye on this developing market dynamic.